Hello health champions, welcome to the Wellness Code. Today we're going to talk about how to really cure toenail fungus and how long it's going to take, and by the end of this video you will understand how to handle the root cause of toenail fungus so that it goes away and stays gone. Toenail fungus is super common. It's like 10% of the population, so tens of millions of people at any given time have this, and for most it's going to just be ugly and unsightly and maybe an inconvenience or an embarrassment, but we have to understand that if it's untreated, if we don't address it properly, it could lead to complications. We could get infections that might start in the toe and then maybe spread to the foot or even further up the leg. But even if it's just an ugly inconvenience, we have to ask ourselves, what does this mean? Does this indicate something? And there's a question I often ask my patients. They come in with an issue and I ask, do you think that your issue means that everything is working perfectly, or is there something that isn't working right? And when I ask the question that way, I always get the same answer: my problem is because there's something that isn't working right. And then I ask, do you think we should fix the thing that isn't working, or should we do something else? And again, the answer is obvious: we need to fix the thing that isn't working. We need to address the root cause. So I've noticed something, that if things are too simple, people don't get it. They think if it's too simple, then they gloss over it, and they think I already know that, and they miss it altogether. And in our current healthcare system, we go to a doctor because we have a symptom, and then they're going to give us some sort of treatment for that symptom. And if we remember, though, that the symptom happened because something wasn't working, now we have to ask ourselves, is this treatment going to make that thing work again? Is it going to do anything to restore the function, or is it only going to treat the symptom with some kind of blocking or interference? And unfortunately 99.9% of the time the treatment is not going to have anything to do with what's not working. But if we remember that there is a root cause, that there is something missing or something interfering, and we start asking ourselves the right questions, and now we realized that it was the root cause that interfered, that kept something from working, causing the symptom, and now we can deal with the root cause instead. And I know this is so simple that if it was just a little more complicated, people would pay attention and get it, but it's a complete mystery in our healthcare field, in our mainstream way of dealing with this, because it is totally unknown. We often hear that microbes cause disease, but we have to understand that these microbes are absolutely everywhere. There's virus, there's bacteria, there's yeast and mold and fungus, and these are just a few of the classifications, but they're everywhere, and we know that we have them inside of us as part of our biome. But it's not just a biome inside, we also have a biome on the outside. We have biome on the skin, and every nook and cranny of the body. They need certain conditions that would allow that, and then they want us to leave them alone, and the number one thing they want to be left alone from is your immune system. So you have a normal defense, you have white blood cells, you have fake egocytes, you have a little Pac-Man that can travel around and gobble up these invaders and keep everything in check. But in order for this immune system to get to where it needs to go, and your toe is as far away from the rest of the body as you can get, you need a circulatory system, and the further away from the heart you go, the harder it is, the more limited the blood supply is going to be. And then these pathogens also love to get fed. They need to have an energy source, and since they're living in you or on you, that energy source has to come from you. And more than anything, they love sugar. They don't do real well with other types of fuels, which we'll talk a little bit more about. They love sugar, and that goes for pretty much anything that you don't want in your body, whether it's a pathogen or cancer or a parasite. They all love sugar, and this also explains why we get more of the fungus in our toes than we do on the hands, because the nails are very similar in both places, but on the toes it's further away, so the circulation is worse, and also because our hands are mostly out in the open and our toes are mostly enclosed in a dark, moist environment. And then we need to be patient and understand that this takes some time, and there's many reasons for that. First of all, you cannot heal a nail. It's like hair, it doesn't heal. You got to get rid of the old and put in a new one, so that existing nail that's cracked and ugly, it's gone. So first of all, you have to become less attractive. You have to change your lifestyle and change the conditions for that nail fungus, and then once you've done that, which might take a while, now you start growing a new nail, and depending on where it is and how healthy you are, that could take quite some time. If we're talking about the hands, they grow a whole lot faster. The nail could grow from beginning to end in about 3 to 6 months, whereas on the feet it's going to take a lot longer, and that range of 6 to 18 months is pretty wide, because this is influenced by how old you are. The older you are, the less likely you are to grow things fast. It also depends on your health and your circulation and your nutritional status. How quickly are you going to be able to get nutrient down to that place to grow a new one? And once you change your lifestyle a little bit to become less attractive to these pathogens, now you also want to be consistent with that, because if you keep having relapses and becoming attractive, then chances are you're not going to complete the process, and these guys are going to come back. First of all, we want to lower blood glucose levels if they are high, because these guys love sugar, and they're not feeding directly off the sugar that you're eating, they're feeding off your bloodstream. It's the blood sugar that is being delivered to all the tissues. That's what they live off of, and they love sugar. They don't really care for protein, they don't really care for fat. And why is this? Because the more primitive an organism is, and these guys are really primitive, they're single cell organisms, they're not going to have an extensive enzyme system, they're not going to be able to break down a wide variety of foods. So all these primitive organisms, they rely on energy from glycolysis, they break down sugar basically. Next, you want to trim your nails and keep them nice and short, because if they're long, then there tends to be this space underneath where you get all kinds of dirt and debris and gunk get trapped. And remember that these fungus, they love protection, they love dark, they love moisture, and this gunk here will hold moisture and provide a perfect environment for that fungus to thrive. So if you look at it from the top, then make sure that you trim it, and that you trim it relatively short, and that you keep it kind of straight. Also, if you get too much into the corner, you tend to get ingrown toenails, so now you get more infections and more problems. So nice and trimmed. And then for the same reasons, it can be a good idea to brush your nails. So once you're done with a toothbrush, then you take your old toothbrush, put it in the shower, and when you're done, you brush underneath here and then help clear out some of that debris. And then you want to also dry your nails, so after the shower be a little extra careful, either with a towel or with maybe a paper tissue, to really get up underneath that edge. Or you could take one extra step and even blow dry your nails so they get really nice and dry. And part of the problem is that we wear shoes all the time these days, and the fungus loves dark and moist, so wear the shoes when you have to, but when you don't have to, try to get several hours a day where you go bare feet. And since they like the darkness, that means they really don't like the light, especially sunlight, especially UV light. So try to go barefoot outdoors and get some sun exposure. And you could, even if you have a solar lamp like a UV light, then you could do a few minutes of that as well. And all UV light is known to be detrimental to all pathogens. Basically, there's no pathogen that likes UV light. And then in order to really heal this and to build a new nail, we need circulation to deliver nutrients and blood and oxygen and all the things that we need to create new tissue. And one of the best ways to jumpstart your circulation is called aerobic exercise. So if you have a sitting resting heart rate or maybe 60 and you're walking and it's up to 110,120, that means you've doubled your heart rate when you're walking. So it doesn't have to be extremely strenuous to improve that circulation. And furthermore, when you're walking at that level, you probably double your heart stroke volume, how much blood it pumps with each heartbeat. So from sitting to walking, you probably increase fourfold that circulation. And if you keep it up for more than 20 minutes, now you're going to notice how your hands and your feet get really warm. That means that every peripheral capillary, every tiny little blood vessel in the very distal part of your body has opened up and gets that nice blood flowing through it. Another thing you can do that is even more profound is called breathing exercises and meditation. And again, most people miss this whole concept because it is too simple. It doesn't seem like it would be that profound. So basically everything in your body has to do with resources. Everything that happens depends on a resource, and these resources have to be allocated. So you have something called your autonomic nervous system, and that is the part of the nervous system of your brain that you're not aware of, that handles everything behind the scenes. Your heartbeat, your breathing, growing fingernails, growing eyelashes, blinking, you name it, your on and on nervous system is dealing with it and allocating these resources on a need basis. But how does it determine what you need? And this is the two branches of the autonomic nervous system called the sympathetic or the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic is your fight flight, that is your stress. So whenever you're stressed, you're going to increase the sympathetic activation, and whenever you are relaxed, you're going to activate the parasympathetic, which is your feed breed portion. So these two branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, they operate opposite each other. It's like a seesaw, and whenever one increases, the other one decreases. So when you have stress, you increase your sympathetics, you will always decrease your parasympathetic to the same degree. And your parasympathetic is responsible for digestion and immune system and growing new tissue and procreation, like having babies, getting an erection and so forth, and even DNA repair. So parasympathetic handles long-term survival, sympathetic handles immediate survival, getting away from the threat that is in front of you right now. So sympathetic always comes first, because if you don't survive the threat in front of you, then there is nothing to survive tomorrow. But the parasympathetic is more important in the sense long term. So when you do breathing exercises and meditation, you're allowing a relaxation response, you're reducing the stress, and you're allowing this seesaw to come back in balance. So how does this now relate to toenail fungus? Well, when we have a sympathetic response, a stress response, we increase blood pressure and we constrict blood vessels. And this is especially devastating for the periphery, because that's where we constrict the most, that's where we squeeze the blood vessels to pull the blood in toward the core. And the opposite then would be what the parasympathetic does. The opposite of constrict is dilate, and in this particular scenario, dilate is not a strategy to live longer. Dilate means to widen the blood vessels to let more blood through, and it is very well known and documented that if you do some breathing exercises, you can increase the temperature in your hands and feet. You sit down and you breathe 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out for 5 to 10 minutes, and your hands and feet will warm up because of vasodilation, because you increase the surface circulation. But it doesn't even stop there, because if you remember, I said that the parasympathetic also handles your immune function. So in order for you to have a strong immune system, you need to lower the stress levels, you need to bring that seesaw into balance. And now from simply breathing and meditating, you have more blood flow and you have a better immune system. And then there's a few more things that you can do, and interestingly, these last few things that I'm going to mention, those are basically the entire program for most people. If you check out a lot of videos or a lot of articles, they're going to only focus on the things that you can do to the nail on the site. They don't cover your immune system or your circulation or your blood sugar status, and those are the most important long term, but these last few can still be helpful. So you can soak your feet, you can use Epsom salts or apple cider vinegar, and I'm sure there's a lot more ideas out there, and you just have helping kind of soften it up and have some kind of chemical or compound that this fungus doesn't really like. There's also different herbal compounds, like tea tree oil is pretty aggressive on fungus. You can use garlic or oregano oil that is pretty harsh, pretty strongly antifungal, antibacterial, and you can also use homeopathics. I use quite a bit of homeopathics in my office, and I know that you can get them as pills or liquids, but I really prefer liquids because then you have the choice of doing ingestion or topical or both. And one interesting example I just remember is I had this itch on my pubic bone, and it was like a little rash, and it would itch for a minute after taking a shower, and then I forgot about it, so I never got it checked down. And then finally I remembered to get checked by one of my associates in the office, and we found that it was related to metals and chemicals. That I thought maybe this is some kind of fungus or parasite or something, but turned out to be metal and chemicals. So I got 2 liquids, homeopathics for metal and chemical, and I put it on, and after having had this for 3 to 4 months in one day, I couldn't even find the thing anymore. There was no witch, it was gone. So don't discount homeopathics either, but the trick of course is finding the right one, which can be tricky. And in the medical paradigm they also do some surgeries and medications, and there's the time and place for everything, especially if you're a type 2 diabetic and your extremities are in really poor health. Pretty much when things are too far gone, then you want to go to more extreme measures. And one thing they can do, if that toenail is in really bad shape, then they can just remove it surgically and you kind of start over and hopefully have a better situation to regrow a nail. And then there is also medication, and one of the most common one is called Lamisil, and if you go as far as to try this route, I would suggest that you start it topical. You could buy this as a cream, and I don't know if it's any better than tea tree oil or anything else, but start topically to try this. If you go in the internal, that's really to me like a last resort, because now you're getting into some pretty heavy side effects, and this internal Lamisil is really harsh on your liver. Typically they'll prescribe a course for several months, and your liver enzymes could very well change during this time period. So if you're in a place where you feel you have to get on that, then make sure to check your liver enzymes throughout. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love that one, and if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.